This is Ed Gamester. He's a blogger and musician from London. And here he is, dazed and confused, and very, very cold on a mountaintop in Lake Tahoe.
No, that does not look good.
He paid $200 for this. Here is Mari Zaragoza, a marketing professional and mother of two, being dragged through more than 11,000 volts of electricity. The most shocking part, this isn't her first Tough Mudder, and it won't be her last. And this is me, battling hypothermia. How the hell did I end up here? And why is this the fastest growing sport in the world? You're about to find out.
This claims to be the world's toughest race.
Modern-day creator of extreme obstacle course racing.
10 to 12 miles long.
They'll crawl over hills of mud.
25 extremely difficult obstacles.
Plunge into a tank of water filled with ice.
Riding through a ring of fire.
Dodge live electrical wires.
The course is capable of grievous bodily harm.
This is the 2013 Reebok Spartan Race.
5 countries.
The hottest thing in sports is the Tough Mudder.
Last year, the adventure sport brought in about $200 million.
Obstacle course racing is actually the fastest growing sport in the U.S. right now.
Now, major brands getting in the game. I mean, these are real mainstream brands.
The top 3 mud runs grew roughly 3,500%.
Obstacle racing has taken over the world of endurance sports.
If you're ready, give me a hoorah! Hoorah! Oh, we are going to test your fitness today. Hoorah! Hoorah! We're going to test your stamina. Hoorah! Hoorah! We're going to test your teamwork. Hoorah!
Some people will say that Spartan Race is a cult or Tough Mudder is a cult. And they're wrong because cults are small. They are absolutely full-blown religions by now.
Raise your right hand, repeat after me. As a Tough Mudder, I pledge that.
I don't think there's much in the history of participatory sports like obstacle racing. I mean, I don't think anything's ever taken off quite like this. In terms of just sudden, explosive growth of a weekend warrior kind of sport, nothing has been like obstacle racing.
You're about to get an experience that you will never forget.
The whole obstacle course phenomenon came out of nowhere and surprised all of us. I think we were inclined to ignore it, and then you just couldn't. I mean, it was just growing so fast. I mean, the mud helped.
You know we got a thing here we like to call mental grit. You got mental grit, give me a loud hoorah! Hoorah!
I love that.
It was freaking awesome.
Best thing you ever done.
You come here and say, we will put you through hell. And they go, yeah, bring it on.
Are we a team? Hoorah! Hoorah!
It borders on insanity to do it the way it's meant to be done.
Like, we're gonna do what? We're gonna get electrocuted? Like, that's ridiculous.
You'd want to see what my body looks like, and I am battered and blue all over. I sometimes worry that people think my husband is abusing me.
Most people, they'd be like, why would you do that? Like, why would you put yourself through that?
That is a $500 million question. In 2015, almost 5 million Americans crossed a finish line caked in mud. Twice as many as half marathons and marathons combined. That's pretty wild considering that in 2009, fewer than 50,000 people ran an obstacle course race, or OCR for short. And that's just in America. OCR is rapidly spreading around the globe, and the question is, why?
The fun side, totally get, but the punishment side is the bigger question.
I hate to do this.
We're selling you something that's really hard to sell. Pain. Selling you pain and sweat and suffering.
When you see the ice and the electricity and the tear gas, it makes you wonder, why are people paying $150 to experience extreme pain? It's baffling.
Is it so Joe from accounting can look like Rambo on Facebook? Are we that narcissistic?
It makes great photos and stories for Facebook and Instagram.
Is life too comfortable? Is the internet making us lonely?
Best thing you've ever done. Incredible.
Are we chasing the latest fitness fad?
It's not just a workout, it's a lifestyle. That's how we do it.
Or have we all just lost our goddamn minds? Seriously, I mean, how is this a thing? My name is Scott Keneally. I am, among other things, an investigative journalist. and my quest for answers has become an obsession, one that began back in the fall of 2011. That's me, 100 feet from the finish line of my very first Tough Mudder. If I look terrified, that's because I was terrified. I was about to run through a field of electrical wires, each promising to pack a 10,000-volt punch, which was rather alarming for a guy like me, as I'm a bit of a wimp. Though I come from a family of hard-hitting football players, I lacked any of their toughness. I was the kid faking shin splints to skip wind sprints. So what was I doing at probably the toughest event on the planet? I was there for a story, or so I told myself. You see, I have a habit of confessing to things that most reasonable people would keep to themselves. Things like chronic bedwetting, crying, crash dieting on the master cleanse, and sweaty pits. And I figured the story about a beta male peeling himself off the couch, training up, and tackling a paramilitary assault course would make for fairly funny material. I was right. That essay was featured in my local alt weekly. But much more importantly, while researching the history of OCR for the article, I stumbled upon the unsung hero of the industry. And he led me down a rabbit hole that would change my life forever.
What we created here with Tough Guy is something that everybody wants to do, because it isn't just running. We take you to the very limits of your endurance. We take you beyond the limits of your endurance so that you take that first step into death. Believe me, that step into death tells you what a marvelous life you live.
Meet Billy Wilson, AKA Mr. Mouse. He's a former soldier and marathon promoter with a taste for the dramatic. Here he is running the first London Marathon with his son, dressed as the back half, the ass half of a horse. It was a charity stunt for his farm in the Midlands of England, a serene horse sanctuary that would soon become ground zero for the OCR phenomenon.
In 1977, jogging boom had just come from America, and I thought, wow, this is something else. I can get back to the fitness where I was in the army. You know, I want to get back to being totally fit, totally capable of everything possible. So I started doing our simple assault course, get out of bed in the morning, go run down the canal, dive in the canal, find the stream, climb up the hillside. And I thought, well, I'm getting fit again. Then I ought to be getting a few people fit with me. So all the little runs I was doing, I closed them all down and said, right, we're going to do one run here, and we're going to call it Tough Guy.
This is the concept of the original fun run reborn, isn't it?
Mr. Mouse staged the first race in 1987, and as 19-time Tough Guy vet Paul Goss will tell you, the phrase humble beginnings definitely applied.
The first time I came up to the event, it was, it was much more of a cross-country event. There was probably about 8 or 9 miles of really rugged terrain. There was a lot of rivers and lakes and stuff like that to go through. The only obstacle really that was here was the one you see behind me, but it was a much smaller version. As the years have progressed, every year they build new obstacles. They seem to get higher, they seem to get wider.
And in 1999, they became electrified.
No one can do that. You can't actually put electricity through a running course.
The health and safety people said, you can't do that. I said, well, they wanted to avoid it. They were afraid of it tremendously. You know, nobody trusted us that we weren't going to kill them.
It was like being hit in the back with a spade. So it knocked me flat on my face. Oh my God, he's actually done it. I can't believe he's done that.
Shit! Bastard! Oh!
Yeah, Bill has a tendency to jump off the bridge straight away. He wants explosions and barbed wire and people on fire. And then we have to tone it down slightly so that we can keep people alive.
What can I do? What can I do to frighten them off, you know, to put them off? How can I test them as Tough Guy? So that's how each obstacle came. And each year they came back, and they'd go and they'd do the challenge. And that's a great description, that is, of how Tough Guy created Tough Guys.
Today, the bulk of the challenges lie in the final few miles. A gauntlet of 25 or so obstacles aptly named the Killing Fields. That's where you'll find the Death Plunge, Torture Chamber, Underwater Tunnels, Battle of the Somme, and others. The event's most formidable obstacle, however, has always been the cold.
That is tough. It's -5 in there today. It'll be a little bit colder on Sunday.
Traditionally, the event is held on the last Sunday in January.
Mother of God, how cold is it? Why would you do that to us?
No surprise, hypothermia has become a real danger at Tough Guy. One that Mr. Mouse understands all too well.
Hypothermia is a solid killer, total killer.
No stranger to the brutality of the course is James Appleton, a 3-time champ. In addition to being one of the world's best obstacle racers, he's a daring landscape photographer who treks to risky and remote corners of the planet for the perfect shot. Yet even he is humbled by the conditions at Tough Guy.
When you first turn up, your first reaction is to want to walk away and to think, I'm not going to be able to do this, or I don't want to do that. The way this whole thing's been set up and the way he runs it each year is to provide the hardest, most brutal, most suffering level during the actual event as possible. So he won't break the ice. He'll put the path right through the middle. He'll send you in straight away so that you're breaking through ice in -5 degree, outside temperature and wind. The whole thing is designed mentally and physically to just break people, and it doesn't hold back in that regard. There's no messing about, there's no gradual easing in. You get thrown in the deep end and you're expected to stay there and do your best to get to the finish.
While Mr. Mouse was definitely the first to sell this special sort of horror to the general public, I wouldn't be surprised if you hadn't heard of Tough Guy until now. You see, although he essentially invented the industry, Tough Mudder brought it to the masses. And Wilson believes it's because Mudder CEO Will Dean stole trade secrets while studying at Harvard Business School, which led to a bitter legal battle that was ultimately settled out of court. When I landed on this juicy nugget, my little humor essay morphed into my own version of The Social Network. I pitched an investigative feature to Outside, and after nearly a year of reporting, it landed on the cover. But that isn't what this film is about. Sure, for me it was the gateway to this world, but that was just the beginning of my journey. And as I started searching for the reasons for OCR's runaway success, it became clear that Dean saw the future and had the savvy to leverage it. Here's my editor at Outside, Mike Roberts.
It is, in a lot of ways, the sport that social media built, really the sport that Facebook built. We are at a point where when we're doing anything in our lives, the first thing we're thinking about is, what happens when I share this online? What are people gonna think about me? This sport just played right into that. Look at me, I jumped through fire and got electrocuted, and you can just see the reaction that gets from people online. I mean, it makes you stop and look.
The most successful brands all came of age at a time when Facebook ads were dirt cheap, and there was a lot less noise in your newsfeed. It was easy to reach potential customers, and once they did, they were smart enough to empower them with free photos for humble bragging. The annoying art of false modesty.
The most genius thing ever, we're like, we're just gonna give you the pictures, put them out. The greatest self-promotion ever.
Morgan Spurlock is a man who knows a thing or two about self-promotion.
If you can somehow brand yourself being tougher than that soft guy that sits to you in the cubicle next to you, if you can come back with like a Fight Club-esque scar on Monday morning and a story that goes with it about what you did. I ran through fire. Yeah, what'd you do this weekend? I ran through fucking fire. I got shocked by 10,000 volts of electricity. What'd you do? What'd you do? Oh, you gardened? Sounds awesome for you.
So, are we all just seeking attention? I posed that and other questions to as many experts as I could track down. From best-selling authors, to superstar athletes, to behavioral scientists. Among them was James Wallman, a trend forecaster who examined the shift from materialism to experientialism in his critically acclaimed book, Stuffication.
Status is really important for all mammals. It's important for humans just as it's important for howler monkeys, lions. In the 20th century, the best way to stand out was through material goods because nobody back then knew what you'd been doing at the weekend unless you specifically went up to each person and told them. But nowadays, people do know what you're doing and what you've done. So if you post a picture of you having finished Tough Guy, then you will get much more status by the very fact you've done it.
Material goods don't always appreciate in value, but I think people understand that having memories, not just experiences, it's memories that appreciate and value, shared memories, something very important. And I believe Tough Mudder delivers those experiences that give people tangible memories that last with them forever.
All of the obstacles, these things are built for narrative, right? They're built to be stories that people tell. You need to do something really crazy, even borderline silly, to get a great story out of it. And cardio step ain't gonna cut it for that.
This is an age of performed identity. Everybody's kind of doing a performed version of themselves on social media. What a good profile picture does to me, it seems, is not just make you look hot, but make the person who's looking at it feel like they want to be part of your world. A Tough Mudder picture would look much more fetching than just like, here I am at the gym being fit. Like, okay, that doesn't seem that fun. I mean, I admire you, you look awesome, but I don't want to like be part of your situation.
And we want to get to a level where people are doing our event, and when a guy goes into a bar, he thinks when he tells a girl that he's doing the Tough Mudder that that girl knows what he's talking about. And that for us will be the sign that we've arrived. The guys are doing our event because they think when they tell a girl in a bar, it'll impress her.
One woman, even the toughest of mudders might hesitate to approach in a bar, is Amelia Boone. Not just because she's cover girl pretty, but because she's a total savage. She's a 3-time winner of the world's toughest mudder, a brutal endurance race in which you do as many laps of a Tough Mudder course as you can in 24 hours. She's also won the Spartan World Championship. But here's the kicker. Amelia somehow finds time to train and dominate the sport, all while working as a full-time corporate attorney. And yet, even OCR's first real breakout star has some hang-ups when it comes to the sport's inherent narcissism.
Whenever you're posting pictures of yourself on social media, it is narcissistic, it's, hey, everybody look at me. I think it comes back to like, would you go out there and do it if nobody knew that you were doing it? If you couldn't post pictures of it, would you genuinely enjoy it? Or is it solely to get other people to give you, accolades and applause and likes and double taps and whatever else on any other social media?
Amelia is definitely the kind of person who would be doing this regardless of whether or not anyone was tuning in. Me? Not so much. Clearly, I like being the center of attention. And to get a better sense of why I'm wired this way, I interviewed Dr. Jean Twenge, a behavioral psychologist who literally wrote the book on Generation Me.
Some of the appeal for doing a Tough Mudder event might be in getting that profile pic that you can broadcast, because now it's not a real experience unless you took a photo of it and then you shared it online with everyone. So it's not enough to go through the perils and the difficulty yourself and to perhaps build that self-control. That might have appealed to a previous generation of thinking, hey, I can go out there and do that. Now there's this idea of, well, I can look tough and I can have that profile pic that makes it look like I really did something. And that might be a lot of the appeal of it, is the image, not so much the substance. There's a couple studies, several at this point, showing that narcissists have more friends on Facebook. So it's clearly an environment where people high in that personality trait are thriving.
People have always talked about the things they did. What we do, our hobbies, our activities, they're part of who we are as much as what job we do and where we're from. So it's part of someone's identity. I don't think that would make someone a narcissist.
Narcissist or not, I am a social media junkie and a shameless self-promoter. Look no further than the movie trailer I made for that magazine story. Nobody does that. But both qualities worked in my favor in late 2012 as I enjoyed a minute of OCR stardom from my expose. Even 60 Minutes wanted to cover the controversy. And though I must have called Mr. Mouse 100 times while reporting the story, I had never actually looked the man in the eyes. So when 60 Minutes offered me a consulting gig on their segment, I jumped at the opportunity. I bought my wife and I tickets to the UK, where I not only met the so-called madman of the Midlands, but was determined to tackle his creation. Billy Wilson had become a sort of mythical figure to me, a tragic hero. Here was a man, a visionary, who was decades ahead of his time, and then, as fast as you can say, Facebook, the world whipped past, rendering him irrelevant at best, forgotten at worst. He seemed like the kind of figure who only surfaced in great works of fiction, or Daniel Day-Lewis movies. But as refreshingly original as Mr. Mouse may be, after touring his farm, it was pretty clear that even with the 25-year head start, there were obstacles to scaling this thing up.
You got to hand it to him. I mean, look, he certainly was before all of us with creating an obstacle race, but as I was going to say, as nice as strange as he is, he would have needed like a comet to hit him to fucking go worldwide with this thing.
Oh, Jesus, what's that? Has he got a rabbit or a rodent?
Yeah, a rabbit.
Get rabbit or rodent?
Everything about Tough Guy flies in the face of professionalism. This is an example of the waiver you have to sign to run a Tough Mudder. And this is the Tough Guy death warrant.
I confirm that if I should die, it is my own bloody fault for coming. I understand that all safety measures are in place and that I should have personal insurance to cover my ineptitude.
Nutters. At a time when the leading brands are activating social media campaigns and analyzing impressions, Mr. Mouse is still licking stamps.
I still like today to send out by post the jelly leg news.
The Jelly Leg is an odd quarterly newsletter that I'll let James try to explain.
Sometimes it contains race information, sometimes it contains bizarre stories about the love of a donkey.
The love of a donkey is the greatest, a baby donkey is the greatest thing in the world.
Nothing about the actual event itself, nothing about the course or race timings or a number, just 4 pages on how lovely donkeys are, which was lovely to read. I enjoyed it thoroughly, but it didn't really make much sense.
Least of all, financial sense.
We spent $60,000 on postage last year. Nobody else in this world spends that money. They all use the free internet to convey their thoughts.
And this right here might be part of the problem. Will Dean famously launched his empire off $8,000 of Facebook ads. And I can't help but wonder where Mr. Mouse would be had he invested any of that $60K in social media. And I'm not the only one who thinks so. Here's Rob Woolen, a member of the Special Forces, a motley crew of Tough Guy vets and volunteers who help build the course and marshal the events.
I do think sometimes that the barrier to the success of Tough Guy is Mr. Mouse, okay? But I'm going to qualify that, and this has to stay in. You need to be that crazy to make this happen. If he was just a normal guy with a farm, he'd be growing cows and wheat and corn, He's not. He's off his tree. He's off his head. He's mad.
Mr. Mouse is the most unique human being I've had the pleasure to stumble upon.
That's quite an endorsement coming from this guy. I may have undersold him in the opening, but Ed is a self-proclaimed swashbuckler, semi-professional wrestler, stuntman, and the lead singer of a comedy band called Gay Bum.
Mr. Mouse is Tough Guy. That sounds like just a really contrived kind of marketing statement, but none of this could be without him. He's a relic of a generation of badasses, and there's not enough of them.
You never really get the sense Mr. Mouse is trying to sell you anything, and that's part of the charm. It feels non-commercial, defiantly so.
I've worked with sponsors. Sponsors are a nuisance because they want 2 suits in your office all the time to tell you what to do. We don't want any of that.
He could have made millions. I don't think he wants a lot of money. I think it's that idea of being remembered. Someone a bit unusual. Someone who could, make people think. He'd like to be a philosopher.
I should be in my little cave on the hillside where people beat a path to come to for the wisdom, because that is where I wanted to be.
But for now, the killing fields will have to do. That's where he schools you.
It's an exercise in pain and suffering. What people can endure, what they're willing to endure, and how far they're willing to take themselves before they step back and say, I've had enough. And some people can do it and some people can't.
And on a bone-cold morning in the Midlands, I was determined to figure out which of those people I was.
we go, tough guys. It's out to go to race time. Let's make sure we're all prepared. Friends and family, please stay behind the ropes. Participants, please have your race numbers clearly on display.
Surprisingly enough, I could do it. I did cross the finish line. But it was not pretty. I had no context for this sort of suffering. In other races, I felt like a king when I crossed the finish line, savoring my free beer, sky high on camaraderie. But after spending nearly 3 hours on the 8-mile course, with feet so frozen I felt like I was running on my ankles, I found myself in straight-up survival mode, wondering if I needed to go to the hospital. My wife can probably describe the aftermath better than I can.
I went into this little hut, and there were maybe like 20 people in there, in this tiny little room, all shaking like crazy, wrapped in those silver blankets. And I found Scott, and he couldn't hold a cup of hot cocoa. This tiny cup of hot cocoa in his hand, and he couldn't hold still to drink it.
Somehow, Amber got me back to our hotel and into a warm bath.
He's this great big muddy man, just looking forlorn, trying to get warm, still shivering, at least an hour later. It's a little scary for me because I worry about my husband. People get really hurt. If you can't feel your body, you don't know what's happening to your limbs, and it's scary.
Yes, it was. But then the craziest thing happened. When the shaking subsided, I was T-boned by triumph. Maybe it's because I crawled into the torture chamber towards much tougher men screaming bloody murder and survived. Or perhaps it's because hypothermia is highly ranked on my do not get list, and I got it and beat it. Whatever the case, I felt steeled, hardened, and proud of my new self-portrait. And as I discovered, my experience isn't anywhere close to unique. According to Michael Norton, a behavioral scientist at Harvard Business School, this feeling of accomplishment is something that so many of us are missing out on.
I think one of the funny things about everyday life in affluent countries is that it's very unclear if we got anything done on any given day, because we send emails and we type things and we print out paper and pass it around, and it doesn't feel like we did anything. It's hard to say that sending 72 emails means that you're really good at doing stuff in the world.
If somebody that lives a very sedentary, normal life all of a sudden can put themselves in a position to experience something that they think they're incapable of and survive, you know, and get that feeling of accomplishment, I think that that's a great thing. That's something that we all want. Everybody wants to go to sleep at night feeling like, wow, I did that, I made it, I can't believe I did that.
I'm guessing the world's most accomplished big wave surfer feels like that pretty often. Laird Hamilton is always doing things nobody can believe. But it's a different story for most of us.
For the general public, it's a way for them to do things they would never do. I have a desk job, so Monday through Friday, I'm sitting behind a desk at minimum 8 to 5, crunching numbers. I don't have those experiences.
When I cross the finish line, I feel alive. It's just the high from all the stuff you can make your body do that you didn't know you could do before. It's so fantastic.
I really feel kind of euphoric.
Man, we did it, man.
Absolutely brilliant.
I got this! I'm just here to do something crazy and badass and finish it, and I did! I totally finished it, and I'm super happy.
When else do you get a chance to actually be genuinely proud of something you've done that day, or to actually overcome something that actually scares you?
When you're scared, it brings mortality right to the front. You get really appreciative of life. You know, your appreciation for living is very present. And so you appreciate other fellow men, you appreciate your family, your children, and ultimately your own life. Think about what, you know, an emotion like fear that makes you appreciate being alive. Mandatory emotion, we need that one. More people need that.
that, middle-aged, I'm going to go around there, I'm going to race my ass off, I'm going to come first, grrr, prove the world wrong.
I want to do something in my lifetime that's good, great, different.
I want to find out what I'm capable of. So I just want to keep pushing myself until I can.
One of the coolest things about obstacle course racing is they throw you straight in the fire and they say, get on with it. And you get out the other side and you go, man, things were on fire out there. And that was freezing cold and that was enormously high and there was wind and there was terror. And I came out and actually, I'm not this tiny, delicate flower that needs society to protect me and bring me up. I'm my own person, you know? I'm an animal.
We're all animals, but I'll be the first to admit that I'm, let's say, out of touch with my animal instincts. Nothing in my modern life could have prepared me for the tough guy level of physical suffering. And that's a problem, according to John Durant, author of the Paleo Manifesto and semi-famous caveman.
For most of human evolution, we lived as hunter-gatherers in the wild, before we started farming, before industry, before the information age. And that was a very different life. We were wild animals. And if you look at any wild species, the simple acts of survival and reproduction required us to move. And we don't have to do that anymore.
In the past, we had real obstacles. We had to run from things with teeth that wanted to eat us. And now, we have to manufacture these obstacles because life, for some people, some lucky people, has become very comfortable.
We started to get better at controlling our environment. We killed off everything that was dangerous and we got safer. We just started to live safer. And then we started having less environmental stresses because we'd heat the house up with our fireplace and now we cool it off with our air conditioning and we keep everything perfect and the lighting's perfect and everything's perfect and we're not designed to live in that kind of environment.
We have numbed ourselves out so far and protected ourselves so much. We're in this wonderful now tech bubble of isolation in our cubicles where nothing can harm us and we're bored to shit.
Materialistic consumerism is causing status anxiety, it's causing stress, it's causing depression in record numbers. So we're understanding that at its base, materialism gives us better standards of living, but it's not really giving us better quality of life. It's giving us better standards of living, it's giving us more and more and more stuff, but it's not making us happier.
Or any healthier.
When I was a kid, I'd go to a gas station and you'd go inside and you could get like windshield wipers and oil. Now you go to a gas station and they got donuts and soda and ding dongs and there's just like aisles of grub and crap. Everywhere you go, there's food. The access to just like cheap, fatty, sugary food is everywhere. And it's just become a part of like this grazing lifestyle that we have. Wherever we go, I'll just get a couple of these, I'll get some of these, and next thing you know, you got a couple of these.
Our desire for instant gratification can make us fat. But the gadgets and gizmos that make our lives easier come with an even heftier price tag, says author Nicholas Carr, a Pulitzer Prize finalist who writes a lot about our relationship with technology.
If you think of what we've built for ourselves just in recent years, it's kind of this digital world that we spend more and more time in, more and more time looking into screens, being operators of software. A lot of jobs now are done through computer screens. A lot of our personal life, we're always pulling out our smartphone. We're getting lots of information through our eyes, but we're kind of distanced from the world and distanced from our own sensory existence. If you look at a lot of the kind of darker science fiction scenarios of the future, a lot of them are about people being rendered passive by technology and kind of all our needs are immediately fulfilled, but we end up feeling very unfulfilled because we're not doing anything interesting anymore. You see this going back to Huxley's Brave New World. You see it more recently with Disney's WALL-E. It reflects this sense, I think, that we deeply have that we don't want to be passive. We don't want to be separated from challenge and effort. We don't want to be distanced from the world. And yet, when you look at how we design our technology and use our technology, we're heading in exactly the direction we know is the wrong direction.
Now, ironically, we're paying for the privilege of doing things we have been trying to get away from for the last 100 years. And that is run through the mud and be electrocuted and risk breaking a bone and getting burned and hypothermia and dying and ego. I mean, oh my God, really? You're gonna pay me $100 so I can torture the hell out of you? Great.
If you go back and showed someone from the 1500s and said, you know, would you like to pay 150 shekels to vomit and crawl through mud, they'd be like, I think I'll pass. My life is horrible enough.
The rise of these Sufferfests, it's not just nostalgia for an era gone by. It's really because these types of movements and actions and lifestyles tap into something very deep that is missing from a lot of people's lives, which is a sense of purpose around their movements and a biologically appropriate lifestyle.
To put it a little more bluntly, here's the man behind the best-selling 4-Hour series, Tim Ferriss.
If you look at a lot of the health issues that people experience, it's because we're not squatting down onto our heels and taking a shit 3 times a day. Quite frankly, I mean, we don't have the basic mobility required to do something that our ancestors did for, you know, millennia, multiple times a day. And I think that there is a very, maybe even subconscious yearning to get back to some of those basics. Animal reconnection to ourselves and the world around us, which we don't get when we're doing this 8 hours a day. That could explain why a lot of the people I know personally who participate in these races tend to log the most desk hours.
So, can the world's office drones and desk jockeys find happiness through horror? Mr. Mouse sure thinks so.
The objective of the Tough Guy is to give people a taste of the worst of life, completely and utterly, so that when they finish Tough Guy, they go out there with a really fresh, clean mind, and they see things in a different way. They go back into the office, to their works, whatever they go with this renewed passion of life.
I didn't just have a renewed passion for life after the 2013 Tough Guy. I had an idea. I returned to Northern California with a plan to share this outrageous event and Mr. Mouse with the world. At first, I thought I'd write a biography of the man. But one of the 60 Minutes producers suggested that Mr. Mouse had to be seen to be believed.
We don't actually kill them. If they could come here and die, that's no problem.
He might have had a point. So I decided to make a movie instead. Not a movie just about Mr. Mouse, but a broader film about the rise of the Sufferfests. I set about building a fan page and enlisted graphic design help from The Painted Warrior, a husband and wife duo who bring their brand of art and athleticism to dozens of races. They're fan favorites on the scene, and with their help, I obsessively created content, logos, memes, and promo videos. I reached out to race companies to help spread the word. And after we hit 10,000 fans in the fall of 2013, I launched a very ambitious 40-day Kickstarter campaign.
Hey, it's Scott with Rise of the Sufferfests. I hope you will find it as inspiring as I do. I hope you'll share this with your friends, and I hope we can make a movie together. So let's make a movie. Rise of the Sufferfests.
Now bear in mind, I was not a filmmaker. I was a writer. And as Amber and I quickly discovered, I was in a little over my head.
Had he known in the beginning how difficult it was going to be, or had someone sat him down and just like gone over the list of things that he was going to have to figure out how to do, he might have been deterred.
Lucky for me, I was just ignorant enough to dive into this project, and have never been averse to faking it before making it. It helped that Amber was up for the adventure.
We're both kind of people who say they want to do something and then figure it out.
She's my rock, the yin to my sin, and she's a hell of an obstacle racer. We've run several Spartan races together, and she's usually waiting for me. See, Amber is a fitness coach by trade and all about high-intensity interval training. Me? I like exercise, but at my own pace. I don't train anywhere near my max heart rate. I'm what you might call a VO2 mid kind of guy. A just enougher. I do just enough to maintain the appearance of fitness, which has left me totally unprepared for things like burpees.
Jog uphill? Yeah. I feel your fucking minus 30 burpees.
Spartan famously dishes out a 30 burpee penalty after every obstacle you hit.
All right, let's do some burpees.
The series is about as hardcore as it gets in the US, which is not surprising if you know its creator, Joe DeSena, a former Wall Street banker and notorious ballbuster.
We've doled out this year 60 million burpees. 60 million burpees, so there's a lot of upset people globally with me right now.
The guy has an insane endurance resume, once completing 2 ultramarathons and an Ironman in 1 week. He did the Iditarod by foot, and when Spartan hit 4 million Facebook fans, he live streamed himself doing 4,600 burpees in 24 hours. He's an animal, and his event is a direct reflection of his hyper-competitive spirit.
A lot of people will say, you don't need timing, everybody should go out and finish, we'll give everybody a trophy, it'll make people happier. I don't believe that. I think there's probably an age where that's appropriate, maybe to 3 years old, 1 to 3. 1 to 3, everybody gets a trophy. Once you're past 3, it's game on, buddy. Knock the 4-year-old over, get moving.
Though Spartan Race and Tough Mudder might seem like the same thing to the casual observer, they're very different offerings. Descent is determined to build a sanctioned sport. Spartan has global rankings, standardized rules and regulations, a pro team, prize money. He has big dreams for OCR.
Obstacle racing should be in the Olympics because think about some of the silly sports that are in the Olympics now. Ping pong, that friggin' flag thing that I did, what is that? It's not even a fucking sport, what is that? Flag dancing. How many flag dancers could there possibly be on Earth? Seriously, 10? I don't even know.
Tough Mudder does not share these Olympic aspirations. With the exception of World's Toughest Mudder, it is not a race, it's a challenge.
We're a community that's about teamwork, camaraderie, and about overcoming awesome obstacles and feeling good about yourself when you've done it.
There are no timing chips, no penalties for failing or skipping obstacles. As long as you cross the finish line, you share equally in the Orange Headband's rich social currency. And to Descena, this represents everything wrong with American culture.
We are in an age of entitlement, it's getting worse.
Everybody gets a trophy no matter how the season turns out.
Sign up and your child is guaranteed a trophy, win or lose, first place or last.
I want to be timed. I want to know how I did. I want to be ranked. I want to be judged. I want to be held accountable. And if you stripped all that away, you'd probably sell more tickets. But it wouldn't mean as much coming across the finish line.
Though Descena and Dean have had a comically rocky relationship, with Descena once saying, "Every day I wake up out of spite for the guy." As the companies have grown up, the feud has mellowed.
Is there an auto industry? Yes, there's an auto industry. Does that mean that Porsche competes with a Chrysler minivan? Not really. And I think that's kind of how we are. I think Tough Mudder's doing something very different from the others out there. I think it's a good thing that there's a choice, and I don't think any one company can be all things to all man.
And this is one of the great things about the industry that Tough Guy birthed. Its popularity has inspired a staggering number of entrepreneurs to create their own event. Want to run from zombies or play cops and robbers? OCR has you covered. Want to slide through an inflatable penis? Seriously, you can do that. There seems to be a course for every kink, and there are a lot of kinks. In 2015, there were nearly 4,100 events in 35 countries. OCR is even taking over your TV. NBC televises Spartan's World Championship and carved a primetime slot for the brand's team competition show. Rugged Maniac was featured on Shark Tank, and Battle Frog, a newcomer, turned quite a few heads with its title sponsorship of the 2016 Fiesta Bowl, and the curious commercials that aired on ESPN.
Battle Frog, gotta live it.
Amelia was even tapped for a national ad campaign.
Amelia, quit messing with the electricity.
Sorry, little voice in my stomach.
My friends who don't do OCR are like, oh, I just saw you in a beef jerky commercial. Why are you in a beef jerky commercial?
And OCR superstar Hunter McIntyre won Steve Austin's Broken Skull Challenge. Factor in the sky-high ratings of Ninja Warrior, and it's clear that obstacle racing of all kinds is having a moment.
Casey Catanzaro has done it!
There is no limit to what this woman can do.
People love American Ninja Warrior and obstacles in general because it's kind of a metaphor for life.
You see so many different people from different walks of life just come in and face their fears and really overcome these obstacles that you maybe thought you weren't going to be able to, and it definitely inspires you to go out and conquer your own obstacles.
With so much public interest and so many people sharing this crazy experience, I thought it'd be easy to kickstart this film. I mean, if someone can raise $55,000 to make potato salad, surely the obsessive OCR community would rally together to help me make this movie, right? Not so much. Despite my best efforts and the occasional guilt bomb, I had a hard time getting people to pony up. In retrospect, I'm sure it had something to do with my insane $297,000 ask and utter lack of credentials as a filmmaker. After the most mortifying 40 days of my life, I fell over $250,000 shy. It wasn't a Kickstarter as much as a non-starter. And though I tried to laugh it off, I'd never been so embarrassed. Even worse, I had scheduled the campaign to end during the weekend of the Malibu Spartan Sprint, figuring that after raising the funds I needed, I'd arrive to a hero's welcome. Instead, I stood at the start line, humbled and humiliated, with fear in my eyes. It got worse in a hurry. Just 2 miles and 60 burpees into the race, I was a mess. I felt like my arms were gonna fall off. And then came the rope climb, right in the middle of the spectator area. After spending the previous 6 months telling everyone who'd listened that I was making this movie, a lot of people there knew who I was. So when I found myself near the top of the rope, too exhausted to hoist my body up even 1 more inch to ring the bell, the last thing I wanted was an audience cheering me on.
I heard you had fell off the rope from the very top. I knew you were tired and you could see it, but I didn't quite understand how severe it was for you.
I was dizzy, dehydrated, and my head was pounding. I had about a mile left, and at the rate I was going, I estimated it would take somewhere between 2 and 4 weeks. So I quit. The Spartan Race slogan is, "You'll know at the finish line." On this day, I didn't make it that far, but I learned plenty through the act of quitting. Specifically, that I wasn't anywhere near the man I needed to be. I was weaker than I thought, physically and mentally. And after putting everything I had into this documentary dream, I was broke. Like, really broke. And as much as I physically cringed at the thought of crowdfunding ever again, that night, with my tail between my legs, I launched a modest Indiegogo. Fortunately, most of the Kickstarter supporters stepped back up to the plate, and I raised enough to bring a film crew back to England, where I was in desperate need of redemption.
There's a great big wet blowing storm coming right at us now. It is howling. It's coming right now. We're in the killing fields. It's here, and you can see it, but you can hear it now on the window. That is coming right at you. You get it coming up now. That's tail on the windscreen. That is wow.
What do you think of the weather?
Not bad. Not as bad as it could be. It's forecast still, but how does it settle?
With winter wailing outside, I found myself going a little stir-crazy. As dreadful as my first tough guy had been, I was jonesing to get back out on the course.
Even negative experiences, like crawling through mud, at the time it can be bad. Our minds are geared in such a way that we tend to think things were rosier than they were over time. And the further away we get, the rosier we think they were, and we only remember the good parts of it. So when you talk about experiences after the fact and someone says, climbing Mount Everest was the most amazing experience of my life, I loved every second of it. If you asked them when they were up at the top of the mountain getting frostbite, they would not have said they were loving every second of it, but you forget that.
Also, after my humbling in Malibu, I wanted to finish something. I wanted to prove to myself that I could tough it out again.
I did it in 2012. And I never wanted to do it again, ever. It was like the worst experience of my life. But then last year, I said, I've got to come back. Because, yeah, 2012 Ed could do it, but can 2013 Ed do it? Can 2014 Ed do it? You've got to keep proving it to yourself, you know? You can't just rely on past deeds.
If there's anyone who could take pride in past deeds, it's James Appleton. Although he won Tough Guy in 2009, he hadn't run the course since. Comebacks are never easy, and for James, the wounds of that race were still fresh.
I ended up finishing the race in quite a bad way. Stage 3 hypothermia was a bit of a mess, really, so it's hard not to remember that. With Tough Guy, you might be at the front, but there's no guarantee you're even going to get to the finish. You start the race, you feel good about life. Fast forward to the last 10 minutes of the race and you're hanging on just to like keep moving. And I've not found anything else that's destroyed me that much in that short amount of time.
After his gutty win 5 years ago, James retired from obstacle racing. He didn't see a future in it then, but he does now.
OCR just kind of blew up. This sport is going somewhere, and I want to be part of that, and to be part of that, I need to be back in this race.
I'm looking forward to my buddy James Appleton here winning this, and I'm terrified. What can I say? This is gonna suck.
It's the moment, you know, this is what you train for. Just come here and do it, get it done. Harden up inside, get on with it, get it done. That's all there is to it now. Just race.
Fuck, it's cold. And it gets colder, and then you get wet. I'm trying to let you keep going. Have a little talk. Bye.
James's comeback didn't go as he hoped. He placed 4th.
So you're a tough guy, come on!
Yeah, I'm a tough guy.
But found himself in a painfully familiar place.
I hate this part. Fucking hate it. I hate the race. Right, top now. Come on, come on, come on.
Are you disappointed?
I want more. Just happy it's over. I'll be disappointed later. Are you going to do it again? That's enough now.
Why would anyone put themselves through this? I might have wondered that if I hadn't been too cold to think.
Really cold? Feel like vomiting? Glad I'm done?
So does this mean that a Spartan is tougher since you DNF'd that 5K?
What?
The bottom line was, I finished my second tough guy, and even shaved a few minutes off my previous time. But it was a little harder to appreciate the accomplishment. I had something else on my mind, something far more terrifying than tough guy. Right before I left for England, I received some news, jarring, game-changing news that I sprung upon my producer Keith the day before the event.
All right, so by the way, you're like now the second person I've told. You know I've talked about fatherhood?
Yeah.
Well, Amber's pregnant. Like 6 weeks pregnant. So when I talk about like stealing up this year, trying to like prepare myself for something I'm like super terrified of.
Yeah.
So
I was, to put it mildly, scared of fatherhood. I used to joke that I wanted between 0 and 1 kid. I'd grown quite attached to the freewheeling, bohemian lifestyle I'd cultivated. Besides, the timing couldn't have been worse. I didn't know how I could afford to finish the movie, let alone support a child. But I loved Amber, and kids were always part of our deal.
There was no conversation because he knew that being with me meant he was going to have a child. So I never once doubted that he would become a father, but there was always his talking about it as though he wasn't excited about the idea.
But this was happening, and gradually my panic and fear went away. It was replaced by an overwhelming urge to prepare myself physically. See, I didn't want to be a just-enougher in fatherhood. I wanted to be active and enthusiastic, and I knew that wasn't a free ride.
Fitness isn't something that you can buy. You have to earn it. You have to do it every day. It's not something that can be taken off the shelf and then you have it. You have to do the daily actions required to feed your inner animal.
You know, I have a saying that you can never have too much fun. You just need to be in really good shape to do it. And you can't maximize the opportunity of all the things there is to do without really being fit. It's about the mental strength and the physical endurance to be able to go and do things, you know, hard enough, long enough to actually kind of begin to, you know, not perfect, but at least perform.
News of fatherhood activated something else as well. Something ancient and ingrained, a protector instinct.
Individual people can be called at moments they don't expect to be heroes. And if that moment happens, you really want to be a hero, not a burden.
I wanted to be able to protect my family if shit ever went down, but I was pretty sure that this guy would be totally useless in a crisis. And now, for the first time in my life, I actually cared. The prospect, or maybe fear of fatherhood, inspired a desire to harness my inner warrior, or whatever you want to call it.
There's an anthropologist by the name of David Gilmour who did a cross-cultural analysis of what manhood has meant throughout the world. And what he found was that universally, there are 3 qualities that a man must possess in order to be considered a man. You had to be able to protect, procreate, and provide. Those are the 3 P's of manhood.
And I couldn't think of a better place to tap into that masculine energy I lacked than at Sufferfests. The scene is chock full of manly men. But perhaps no one personifies my macho ideal better than Hunter McIntyre.
Hey everybody, that was me driving my imaginary motorcycle down here in South Beach, Miami. That right over there is not heaven, it's sunshine.
The Sheriff, as Hunter likes to call himself, is one of the most outrageous characters in obstacle racing. He's a former Abercrombie model who has spent a lot of time on the wrong side of the law.
I have been an alcohol and drug enthusiast since about 12 years old. Arrested multiple times, sent to rehab. I nearly killed myself on cocaine.
But he cleaned his act up. He stood atop the podium for almost half of his 40-something races, and is one of the few athletes dominant enough to make a living in mud.
Hunter McIntyre!
To be honest, before I met him, I decided he was way too much. Too many shirtless selfies, too many caps locks, too full of himself. I mean, he has a Macho Man Randy Savage tattoo. Who does that?
Actually, my initial reaction is like biceps wins races. He has hashtagged that very well.
After interviewing him and realizing he's in on the joke, I warmed up and even penned a profile. Though he clearly has a wild side, at the end of the day, he had a thing that, as a dad-to-be and an aspiring filmmaker, I was seeking in spades. Confidence born of competence.
My understanding of my confidence is something that I can always bring to the line in any situation and just say, you know what? I got 1 million horsepower plugged into me right now, and I don't care what you're gonna say. I'm gonna get it done. Any situation.
Give Hunter the time that he's gonna be gunning for today.
6:39.
Done.
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 That's it.
That's simple.
Done.
Hunter is always ready for battle, and I wanted to be like that. So when offered the chance to attack a course named after some of history's most manly men ever, I hopped on a plane to the Netherlands.
Ah!
Strong Viking is one of several new OCRs spreading across Europe. It looks a lot like Tough Mudder, but with a distinct, if not cartoonish, Viking twist. But as whimsical as the theme may be, the 12-mile course through supremely pretty countryside packed one hell of a punch.
It's kicking my ass. I think it's the most fun I've had, but fuck.
I was definitely not ready for that battle. Though I wanted to get in shape for fatherhood, I got sidetracked, spending way too much time at my computer, trying to find a producer, a brand sponsor, some way to make this movie. And the sudden burst of exercise left my Achilles inflamed and me limping for weeks. I did not feel like a strong Viking, or very manly at all.
Modern day life has basically kind of killed the athletic and rough and tough body of the past. What used to define you as how well you could swing your broadsword in battle is now how well you can, move a mouse or, you know, work your tablet.
So there's all this sort of like, I don't know, people would call a crisis of masculinity. We no longer need men who know how to fight. We no longer need men who know how to hunt. We no longer need men who know how to farm and do the back-breaking labor there, because modernity provides that for us.
Those types of like hardcore blue-collar, get calluses all over your hand jobs have been whittled down. Like those are few and far between. We live in a world where we don't get scars. You get paper cuts.
I think there's a deep-rooted insecurity and lack of purpose that a lot of men in particular feel in a world where, in contrast to times past when they were the primary provider and could really feel secure in that role, in a dual income household, I mean, you end up, I think in many cases, just feeling like an optional sperm donor.
Women don't need men. I am telling you fellas, they're trying to get rid of us.
Is it true? Is this the end of men as we know it? That's Hannah Rosen's theory.
I look at the Hunger Games and I see Katniss and I'm like, wow, they're really playing with gender roles. You know, she's a provider and she's the hunter, and Peeta's the baker and he's the romantic, and they're really switching them around. So I think we're at a moment where the pop culture images of men are in flux.
Out here, the only smoke they smoke is Marlboro.
The Marlboro Man is a sincere homage to old American notions of masculinity. Even if there's a destructive element to his smoking, there's kind of a romantic loner destructiveness. And now he's replaced by the Old Spice guy, who is a joke.
Anything is possible when your man smells like Old Spice and not a lady.
He's also on his horse. He's also by himself. He's also very like buff and fit, but he's, you know, spraying himself with cologne. That's like the ultimate in ornamental masculinity. I'm just like, I'm wearing basically a costume of manliness, but I'm not really a man.
So what's a guy like me to do? Where does he turn?
If you took the categories of old, you know, macho markers, like Tough Mudder kind of checks every one of those boxes, but in a much gentler way. You're mimicking trench warfare, but not only are you not getting shot at, but you're not necessarily getting timed or judged, and you're being praised just for doing it. So I think you're kind of getting the best of all worlds there, you know? And by the way, I have to say, I sound like I'm making fun of it, but I actually think it's cool.
While one could certainly make the case that the rise of the Sufferfests is in part a sign of men desperately trying to feel like men, author and avid CrossFitter J.C. Hertz thinks there's more to the story. After all, there are a lot of women in mud, like 35% of all participants.
I don't know whether there's a crisis in masculinity. There might be, but if there is, this is certainly a way to address it. I think overall, there's a hunger for rituals. Especially among millennials, there's this question mark of, when am I an adult? I think we're sort of reprising that rite of passage.
Arctic enema on a 28-degree day, that's a life-changing thing.
Holy shit!
You go from a person who hadn't done that to a person who just jumped into an ice bath, came out, and holy shit, I'm alive.
Tough Mudder, Spartan Race, Tough Guy, they are rituals. Physically challenging rituals that when somebody trains for them and accomplishes them, they are a different person.
And that was kind of the point. I clung to this idea that I could become more competent and capable through mud. But was I being naive? According to Brett McKay of the Art of Manliness blog, most definitely.
In a lot of ways, it's sort of masturbatory. It doesn't really serve a purpose, but you do it because it feels good. If you finish a Tough Mudder, for everyone else, that doesn't really mean anything. So for a rite of passage to really have any significance, other people have to recognize it as something. And for some people will recognize it, fellow Tough Mudders or Spartan Race people, they'll recognize like, yeah, great job, hurrah. But for the rest of everyone else, it was like, okay, you paid $125 to run through, to get tortured. What does that mean? And
Brett's not alone in his criticism.
One of the things that makes me think it's really entering the mainstream is I think I've even seen some sort of backlash. People are starting to ask, how does this interact with my values, even if it's something I haven't done? Like it's on their radar, even if it's not something they would do.
Why? Yeah. Why would we do this? After watching the setup, I'm surprised we're all even standing here.
Not even AJ Jacobs would do one of these, and he's made a career out of turning wacky experiments into best-selling books.
It is so not for me. I would rather a pleasant fest. That's more for me. I would rather, be in a pool that's 85 degrees, paddle around for a little, go in the jacuzzi. That's my kind of crucible. I feel that my life is painful enough. I've got there's so much horribleness in my life. Most of it is psychological as opposed to physical.
The word crazy, psychotic, that gets thrown around a lot.
My grandparents are 100% sure I am gonna die.
My parents think I'm crazy. The classic statements are like, oh, I spent my whole life looking after you and making sure that you weren't hurt when you were a kid, and now look what you're doing to yourself.
I kind of lied to my parents about the first world's toughest mudder because I didn't exactly want them to know what was going on because I think they would have been like, no, there's no way you're going to do this. They stayed up the entire night, that first night, and were just petrified.
What does your mother think?
She thinks I'm absolutely psycho. That I should be out doing brunch right now, drinking mimosas.
My parents certainly don't understand why I keep doing these things.
The electricity, the cold water, you guys are nuts.
Are you out of your mind? Your father just told me you're planning on going back to England to do that race again. What are you thinking?
Whether or not we're crazy, that's a matter of perspective. But one thing that's undeniable is that some of us are super obsessed. We talk about it too much. We post way too many photos, some of which we definitely should not post, ever. Seriously, please stop doing this. We can come across as a bit culty, and some of us are trying to be cult leaders.
There seems to be a lot of self-promotion, especially within OCR. Since when do you get the right, or when are you legitimate enough to make an athlete page? Maybe that's people just trying to establish themselves as a brand and things like that. But,
Any group, you're gonna find fanatical people in it. They go nuts over things that aren't worth going crazy for. Like the people that write in all caps. Those are people that always have something to write in all caps about. Tough Mudder has no more finisher shirts, no way, what a ripoff. That all caps person. Or the Spartan medal, it's a new medal this year, well, this is nonsense. I think those people are, they're gonna be that way about everything.
90% of the people are great people and fun people and, are just out there for shits and giggles. But then there are people that can ruin an entire community. There's a lot of ego in this sport, and I don't understand why, because at the end of the day, we're literally crawling under barbed wire. The vast majority of people will laugh at you.
Aside from the obvious fanaticism, the industry has also come under fire for some of its marketing tactics.
All right, the Tough Mudder is about to get a lot tougher this year.
They're going to send out tear gas, okay? Tear gas.
Tear gas at some point?
One of them does involve tear gas, that's correct.
It feels like having sriracha poured into cuts. Ow.
What's coming next? What poison darts? Are they gonna have machetes to the face or disembowelment? Bees and acid in the eyes? The sky's the limit.
I don't think that proves anything other than you may have no sense if you think you need to do something where you get tear gas. It's just go for a run. That's enough.
Though Crybaby had the desired effect, is all press good press?
It has a controversial history.
Sure.
Are you worried that this might seem a little bit tone deaf?
I think the important thing to understand is what we're trying to do is create something that's challenging and intimidating. And a big part of what Tough Mudder is about is challenging people mentally as well as physically. And the whole point of Tough Mudder is actually it's supposed to be fun. And you may say, well, what's fun about getting tear gas? Well, it's the build up to it, it's that sense of anticipation. And when you've got through it, you've all done something that's the same together.
Mark Morford, a two-time National Online Columnist of the Year, was a little more pointed.
It is extreme privilege to say, I'm so entitled now, my life is so comfortable, that I'm going to pay you now to have this done to me, and in a controlled environment, and experience what all these other people experienced in a much harsher way. That I get to experience it just a little taste in a safe environment, like a Disney version of real life. What are you really saying? Cool, tear gas me a little bit. Oh, that's what they experience, those poor people out there in the street. Wow, thank God I'm not a minority. Really?
Personally, I don't think very many or any mudders are thinking this when they sign up. But Mark is giving voice to a segment of the population, or social media anyway. It's not all that surprising, however. Shock factor has always been the secret sauce of OCR's success. War is an inescapable theme at Tough Guy, and Mr. Mouse makes no apologies.
These things need remembering. The only way you'll remember the Holocaust, the only way you'll remember the First World War and the Battle of the Somme like we've built here, is for keep reminding people of it. And here we show them in reality what it was like. Here they can experience it personally.
Though there's a very distinct line between the Tough Guy taste of hell and the ones encountered in real warfare, the fact of the matter is, though OCR is controlled chaos, there's only so much you can control the chaos. Here's Dr. Marna Greenberg, an ER physician near Allentown, Pennsylvania. She and her colleagues were stunned by the aftermath of a Tough Mudder.
None of us had heard of Tough Mudder before. So you're crawling through a cage in water, in mud, you're wet and hot, and you're getting more than one shock on purpose? I was like, what? I mean, you've got to be kidding me. I think one of the women, particularly that struck a chord with me, was that she was crossing the finish line through the last obstacle in which she was receiving serial shocks, and she felt like she was going to pass out, and implying that she's asking for help. And the spirit of the group at the time is to hand her a beer, and that was very frustrating to her because what she needed was an ambulance and IV hydration, and she ended up staying in the hospital for kidney failure.
She published a case series detailing the injuries, and the report went viral, as did news of the first death at Tough Mudder.
The mother of 28-year-old Abhishek Sengupta filed a wrongful death lawsuit last month against Tough Mudder.
Sengupta wasn't the first fatality during an obstacle race. It wasn't even the first drowning, but it got the most attention. For his part, Dean stands by their safety record.
The most dangerous part of doing a Tough Mudder event is the drive to the event. You are 7 times more likely to be injured driving to the event than doing the event.
The simple fact is, statistically speaking, way more people die during other mass participation sporting events, like marathons and triathlons. You just don't hear about it as much. It's a lot easier to sensationalize something as muddy and messy as OCR.
Is it supposed to be scary? The answer is yes, it's supposed to be scary, but scary and dangerous aren't the same thing. A roller coaster is scary. A movie can be scary. It doesn't make them dangerous. There's nothing that's dangerous about this event, but we are supposed to challenge people, and yes, some of the obstacles are supposed to be a little intimidating. Doesn't mean to say they're not perfectly safe.
So the question is, despite the risks of sickness, injury, death, or simply annoying the hell out of our friends outside this tribe, is it worth it? A lot of people, like these people, sure think so. And I tend to agree. For starters, these events are, well, fun.
When was the last time that you got to go run around in the woods and play?
Everything you dreamt of as a kid has finally become reality. Here is like an adult obstacle course that's now for me. There's nothing more you want to do than play like grown-up chutes and ladders.
Care freedom aside, these experiences do change lives in meaningful ways. Here's Matt B. Davis, the OCR obsessive behind the Obstacle Racing Media website and podcast.
There's a lot of like cheesiness, right? Like about the positivity, and you can be cynical about that, or I can be cynical about that, but it's really the truth. If I'm talking about myself in a positive way and I'm working on goals, and whether that goal is these elite people going from 5th to 1st, or whether it's the average person saying, I want to place in my age group, it becomes important to them, and their whole life changes because of it.
I have 3 children, so to be an inspiration to them, show them how to work hard, be a winner.
I'm on a bone marrow transplant list. To me, this is just another obstacle that I had to kind of overcome.
When I first started my fitness journey, it was all about the number on the scale. Reaching a number would have meant everything to me. 2 years later, and after Spartan Racing, to me, finishing faster, finishing stronger, getting up that rope means more to me than any number on the scale.
This is for real for some people. It's not just a game, and it's not just some trivial thing, you know, that I want to be the best. Nah, man, they're out here living, surviving, again, facing fears, chasing goals, baby.
This is for the dad. My father passed away on Monday night. This is for him. He's so proud.
Right. Dig.
I might be an amputee, I might have depression and addictions, and all those things are true for me, but that's not my identity. The shadow is there, the struggle is there, but you can make the choice to be more than that, to have more faith, to have more love, to have more hope, and to have more heart than scars.
I've become a very selfish person in life, and that's changed. A lot of people who are at these events knew who I was, had like seen me at courses and wanted to say hi to me, but like just couldn't come up because I'm just like, rah, fuck yeah, I'm here to party, I'm crushing races, type attitude. And then I got into this small room with about 20 people per class, and I started teaching them. I got to really get to know these people, and I got to realize that, like, you know, these people care about me, and I started to care about them, and I started to understand that, you know, that's where the community is. These people are training together outside of these races to get ready for these races, and then they got each other's backs at these races. And I realized, I'm like, dang, this is so much more fun. Like, hey, wait a second, there's my buddy going through the mud pit. I'm like, fuck yeah, get through that mud pit. And I'm like, yeah, you know? It totally flipped the experience upside down on me. You know, before it was just like an octagon cage. It was just for me to fuck up somebody else, you know? That was what the course was for. And it grew into like a house, a home. I don't even know a way to express it, and I've really, you know, come to understand who I am as a person while also getting to grow within this community.
The great thing about running, no matter where it is, whether you've been a marathon runner or obstacle runner, when you get out there, you don't ask the guy next to you, what he does for a living. You want to say, come on, we'll run together.
The people make it special. Everyone's out there like struggling together and helping each other out.
If I'm helping somebody like at the wall, right? If I'm helping somebody pull barbed wire off them, that spirit's already been embodied of helping people. So it's like, it becomes a true community, online and offline. These people like, great, now I've met you in the race. Oh, we've been friends on Facebook for a year. Now I finally get to meet you. And then, you know, it's a love fest.
Painter boy, my name is David. I'm a big fan, man, and I'm just proud to run this race.
Oh man, my pleasure.
You're an inspiration. I saw you out the course.
Yeah, a few times.
You're rocking it. Congratulations.
You too. Great job to you. Thank you.
While the community pulls people in, it also teases people out. Shy people like Steven Sinek.
The very first time we body painted, I had complete strangers talking to me, starting up a conversation sparked by the body paint. It's kind of like instant celebrity.
Let's go, Painted Warriors!
Dodge! So in that way, it sort of has pulled me out of a shell and forced me to be more of a social person, which I think has been something that I'm craving in my life, whether I really realize that or not.
That human need to connect and to belong still needs to be fulfilled. That's a universal, that's not going to change. And there's fewer ways to do that these days in person.
We're in this world where, as connected as we are electronically, we're almost in this age of having no real neighbors, right? Like our lives are so sectioned off. There's only 6 apartments in my building. I think I know people in 2 of them, maybe.
I could live in my house and never leave and have every single thing I ever want delivered to my house in one little room. I could never leave.
When you're always connected online, it oftentimes crowds out any type of connection offline. You want to use the tools. You don't want to have the tools use you.
We don't join groups as much because we might be interacting with people, but it's on our phones or on our computers. It's not true social interaction. It's like kind of like junk food for the soul. It doesn't truly feed that hunger of loneliness.
I recognized immediately, man, what these people are here for, it isn't just the physical of this. We're sharing a consciousness, we're sharing a feeling.
People are really craving community and human connection and belonging. And Tough Mudder, they've really tapped into community. And they've created little tribes of people that suffer together. They become a band of brothers. And people want that. They are thirsty for it.
I can totally relate. I love being around passionate people of all stripes. So I'm not at all surprised by my attraction to this crew of mud-loving lunatics. I was surprised that I actually started picking up their healthy habits. After my Achilles healed, I found myself willingly going for runs. I wasn't pushing myself to the max or anything, but I was exercising with much more regularity. And if there's anyone I have to thank, it's this guy.
It's good, I wanted to hear your voice.
For much of my adult life, friends with kids would throw out a lot of superlatives about the love for a child. They spoke of parenthood with such cultish zeal that I kind of thought they were lying to themselves. Turns out, they were right. The suffocating fear I felt before my son's arrival gave way to an overwhelming sense of relief. Life was no longer about me and fulfilling my needs and desires. In a flash, fatherhood showed me a selfless side I didn't know I had.
I think he was probably afraid of having less freedom, and I don't think he sees it now. I don't think he's experiencing being a father as having less freedom.
We're just two dudes hanging out, reading kids' books, eating our fists, whatever.
I knew that he would catch on quickly, and I also knew that he would be madly in love with our child.
Amber was right, as usual. And if months ago the prospect of having a child was enough to make me want to get into shape, now, holding my son in my arms was all the encouragement I needed to actually do it. It was time to step it up, to see what I was made of. I kicked things off with a fitness assessment. I'd like to see what a man can do in 12 weeks if he takes it really seriously. Another tough guy was approaching, and though I didn't know how I was going to get to the race, I wanted to train as though I'd be there.
How was that? Oh.
I was not particularly fit, but I knew I could fix that. I signed up for CrossFit and showed up, day after day. And since shared suffering is easier than just plain suffering, I pushed myself way harder than I ever had in a gym. And as if the universe was throwing me a bone for my dedication, I chanced upon an executive producer who had the passion and resources to help me finish the film and return to the place where it all started. At risk of sounding overly dramatic, I viewed this third pilgrimage to the killing fields not only as a statement of how far I'd come on this OCR adventure, but how fit I was to be a father.
Good morning to you all. You're absolutely wonderful, and we really, really appreciate you being here. You are a tough guy, an original, one of the only, the greatest, the best tough guy in the world here at the Sanctuary.
Keep going! My hard work paid off. I did much better than I was expecting.
Yeah, buddy. How you doing? You can do it, man.
Though it's hard to make an exact comparison year to year, as the course is never the same, I did improve almost 30 minutes against the median time to finish in the top 20%. James Appleton also returned in 2015, and let's just say he plumbed new depths of pain on his way to a third place finish.
Dave! Hey! Get a blanket, Randy.
Seriously,
Just take your shoe off, I'll get back. I'll come back.
Come back.
Come back.
Get back, get clothes on.
James, clothes off. Clothes off.
Will you tell me why you run this?
Right, okay.
I don't really know anymore.
Regardless of the reason that people get into this, there are some really tough moments out there, and especially as the races get longer. And you can look back at a time when you know you were miserable in this moment right here, and how do you deal with that? And then you apply that to your life in other situations, in personal situations, in professional situations. And it's different, you know, you're not crawling through the mud in like freezing cold water, but you know that, hey, you've gotten through some pretty tough stuff. Like, I can do that in my everyday life.
Most of us will never go to battle, but to have that strain, that pressure, that fear, that discomfort for a day is something that everybody could benefit from.
You can't grow if you're comfortable, and you know, I always tell people, I go, listen, if you want a plant to flower or blossom, you prune it. Nothing comfortable about getting pruned. We're no different. If we're not being tested and challenged, then we just can't grow.
You don't want to suffer just to suffer. You want to suffer with a purpose. And by doing that and getting out of your comfort zone and being completely uncomfortable, maybe, hopefully, you start to become comfortable with being uncomfortable. And when that happens, that's where the magic is. That's when you win in life.
Here's what I know. My journey into fatherhood feels less frightening now. And for me, that's a big win. Though Raleigh isn't running around just yet, when he does, I'm confident I'll have the stamina to keep up. I've become more than a just enougher. It's occurred to me now that the reason I got stuck in the mud is because I needed to. I needed something this odd and extraordinary, this nectar from my inner narcissist, to mold me into the man I needed to be. And I think that every member of this club, this suffer club, so to speak, signs up in hopes of fulfilling some need. Whether it's the public praise, the rite of passage, the camaraderie, an excuse to get fit, whatever it is, we're all seeking something in mud. And while our very participation seems to speak to personal and social deficits, the magic of Sufferfests is that they have the ability to fill them. Although Mr. Mouse hasn't received the fame or riches he probably deserves, he understands the power of the movement he created.
People reach a point where you're in the in-between world between life and death. You're taking your body beyond your normal endurance in seconds, in absolute split seconds. Their whole experience of life comes to them. They will find whatever it is they're searching for.
The world is changing vastly. You know, people are no longer contented and happy. But if they get into our sport of obstacle running, it changes your perception.
Yeah.
We are on this earth for one purpose, reproducing a better world. And I believe that what we've created in obstacle running is going to crack that.
It'd be easy to get stuck on Mr. Mouse's many eccentricities. Put him in a box, label him crazy. Many have. Hell, it's easy to dismiss all of the claims these mud run companies make about OCR's power to change lives. It can come across as contrived. Shiny marketing slogans designed to upsell you on a better you. But if you're willing to take the ride, I think you'll be surprised by what you find.
We are the new breed. This is what we are. Obstacle running is now a breed apart. It's growing and it's going to grow. We're only just scratching the surface of it. Everywhere in the world it's going to grow and grow and grow to an enormous, unbeatable mass of goodness. That's what we are.
My name is Scott Keneally, and among other things, I'm a father, a filmmaker, and an OCR addict.
It's not a few miles or 75 miles. You're still out there.
And that's me in the fall of 2015, 17 hours and 35 miles into the world's toughest mudder. The fact that I'd even attempt something this insane says all you need to know about how far I'd come. The fact that I actually reached my preposterous 50-mile goal, 50 miles, is still so surreal.
If I can do this, I DNF'd a freaking Spartan, a 3-mile Spartan race. So like, if I can do this, I feel like there's something inside all of us that's pretty special.
I was there to find my breaking point, to see how much pain and suffering I could endure before calling it a day. Instead, I was struck by the universal power of OCR, teamwork.
Nice job.
Even though we all had our own personal goals, everyone, from the pit crews to volunteers, MCs to fellow racers, all worked together to help us achieve or exceed them.
Thank you guys so much.
You did it.
Everywhere you looked, people helping people. We were that unbeatable mass of goodness. It's not just that OCR changes lives, it's that it cultivates empathy. And if it takes a little mud, sweat, and suffering to bring out the best of humanity and show us our true potential, well, sign me up.